you know, Angel Reese has definitely been in the headlines, man, after erupting in the press conference, pretty much swearing at reporters. And I'm here to tell you today is another day of the Angel Reese drama because she has simply smacked the clipboard out of an assistant coach's hands. Yes, now all of this went down during the Washington missed this game. This happened on national television.
The Chicago Sky are once again caught in controversy, but this time the storm didn't start between the lines. It unfolded on the sideline. Angel Reese, who proudly embraces the role model spotlight and recently earned the honor of being an NBA 2K26 cover athlete, just delivered a sharp reminder. Elite talent doesn't automatically translate to elite leadership. Now the pressure shifts to first-year head coach Tyler Marsh. The decision he makes next won't just address a moment, it could define his entire tenure in Chicago.
The referees blew every whistle. Like, I'm not joking. There was one play where Angel Reese dribbled backwards. She backed into Aaliyah Edwards and tripped over her own feet and got free throws. The free throws that led to this happening were unbelievably soft. That led to Angel Reese breaking a coach's clipboard, walking over and slapping a coach's clipboard. And by the way, if this was Caitlin Clark, you just know they'd be calling out her anger problems.
On July 8, 2025, during a crushing 81-79 loss to the Washington Mystics, the Chicago Sky didn't just drop a game, they sparked a firestorm. With 29.9 seconds remaining and the score knotted at 77-77, tension was already at its peak. But what happened next shifted the spotlight away from the hardwood. Angel Reese, one of the league's brightest young stars, abruptly walked off the floor and knocked a clipboard out of the hands of Ann Crosby, the team's vice president of basketball operations and strength and conditioning. In a moment where composure was needed most, frustration took center stage, and now the fallout could linger far longer than the final buzzer.
A lot of people are picking up on is when she is walking over to the bench and she slaps the clipboard out of her coach's hand. And you guys, my honest reaction to this when I first saw it, I was just laughing. It's kind of like the reaction that you're seeing from me right here. I wouldn't look into this too hard. I know it's already become controversial because they're like, oh, if another player did this, there would be think pieces written about it. And it's like,
this wasn't a subtle miscommunication. It wasn't a harmless sideline mix-up. It wasn't even the kind of accidental contact you brush off in the chaos of a tight finish. It was deliberate. It was visible. And it played out on national television with no ambiguity. Just hours after being revealed as a cover athlete for NBA 2K26, a platform meant to symbolize excellence and professionalism, Angel Reese found herself at the center of a moment that told a very different story. In a game hanging in the balance, with less than 30 seconds separating composure from collapse, emotions took over. And in that brief window, the image of poise and leadership gave way to frustration, the kind that doesn't disappear when the final buzzer sounds.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Barbie? The emotional decline continues for Angel Reese. The temper tantrums, the complete loss of emotional control continues for the Bayou Barbie, as well as the Chi-Town Barbie and Double Double Barbie, and whatever other alias that Angel Reese has decided to give herself.
And here's what makes it even more concerning. This doesn't feel random. Feels familiar. This isn't one emotional flare-up in isolation. It's the latest entry in what many observers see as a season-long pattern. The sideline tension, the post-game comments, the subtle shots, the visible frustration when things don't revolve around her. Angel Reese hasn't just been playing basketball this year, she's been operating in a constant cloud of headlines. And too often, those headlines have centered on controversy rather than cohesion. When a franchise like the Chicago Sky is trying to establish identity, culture, and accountability, repeated moments of public friction don't just stay in the media cycle. They seep into the locker room. Leadership isn't about spotlight management. It's about emotional discipline when everything is on the line. The troubling part isn't a single outburst. It's the perception that the team narrative keeps bending back toward one personality instead of the collective mission. And in a league where chemistry is everything, that kind of dynamic can quietly fracture trust long before it shows up in the standings.
It was wild, all right? It was wild. I mean, tempers were flying. This was an all-out rivalry, man, all right? I mean, even Angel Reese was pissed at this moment. Look at this. Pissed. All right? Pissed. This was close to the end of the game. 29 seconds left. Game tied. Game on the line. And I think she was called for a foul.
And that's where the larger narrative starts to take shape. The back and forth tension with Caitlin Clark. The repeated public frustration with officiating. The feeling that every setback somehow morphs into a personal grievance instead of a team correction. Fair or not, that perception has followed Angel Reese all season. The clipboard moment didn't happen in a vacuum. It landed on top of months of sideline reactions, social media commentary, and visible irritation. So when she later posted that, "Those were pissing me off," framing it as heat of the moment frustration and promising it wouldn't happen again, it didn't quiet the noise, it amplified it. Because in professional sports, apologies are measured against patterns. And patterns are measured against consistency. For a franchise like the Chicago Sky trying to build stability, the optics matter. Championship cultures are usually defined by controlled intensity, players who channel emotion into execution, not spectacle. Right now, critics argue this is starting to feel less like a team journey and more like a weekly episode in a personality-driven drama. And whether that perception is fully deserved or partially exaggerated, it's the reality the organization now has to manage. In the end, social media explanations are temporary. Leadership is long-term. And the gap between those two is where reputations are either repaired or reinforced. If you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Now let's shift the focus to Tyler Marsh, because he might be facing the toughest challenge of anyone in this situation. Marsh arrived in Chicago as a first-year head coach with a resume that commands respect. He's been part of championship environments at multiple levels, the NBA G League, the NBA, and the WNBA. He's worked alongside elite basketball minds like Nick Nurse, Rick Carlisle, and Becky Hammon. He built a reputation on integrity, on player development, on culture. But here's the uncomfortable reality of coaching. None of that matters if you can't establish authority in your own locker room. When a high-profile player like Angel Reese has a public sideline outburst and there are no visible, immediate consequences, perception becomes the problem. Fair or unfair, it starts to look like discipline is optional. And that's dangerous territory for a first-year coach trying to set a tone. Veteran coaches can lean on established credibility. Marsh is still building his foundation. And moments like this test whether that foundation is solid or still wet cement. The job now isn't just about X's and O's. It's about standards. It's about whether the culture he's known for can withstand a storm of personalities and public scrutiny. Because if he handles it decisively, he reinforces leadership. If he doesn't, critics will argue the team dynamic is drifting, and in professional sports, drift turns into dysfunction fast.
Angel always talks about being willing to do whatever dirty work is necessary. Did you see that today? Did you see a performance that in terms of the timeliness and the types of plays that she made, it went beyond the stat sheet?
Yeah, I think that's who Angel is in the best way. I think that that's what her skill set allows her to be. That we shouldn't just look at her as a rebounder or just as a scorer. There's so many different things that she can do on a court that helps a team win. And even though shots weren't falling for her tonight, she had 5 assists. She had huge rebounds down the stretch. And that's the kind of versatility that we see in her, and she's embraced it so far.
Tyler Marsh wasn't hired just to design plays, he was hired to build a culture. When general manager Jeff Pagliacca brought him in to lead the Chicago Sky, the praise centered on trust, accountability, and his ability to develop each player's unique strengths. His resume speaks for itself. His mentorship tree, learning under names like Nick Nurse, Rick Carlisle, and Becky Hammon, suggests he understands championship standards. But calm and composed leadership only matters if it shows up when things get uncomfortable. Drawing up late game plays? That's preparation. Managing rotations? That's strategy. Developing talent? That's process. The real test is confrontation. This is Marsh's first defining leadership moment as a head coach. Not a whiteboard challenge, a culture challenge. What happens when your most visible player, someone expected to model accountability, has a public emotional outburst? What message does the response send to the rest of the locker room? Because in professional sports, discipline isn't about punishment, it's about standards. If standards bend for star power, the culture fractures. If standards hold firm, even when it's uncomfortable, credibility grows. Right now, Marsh isn't being evaluated on schemes. He's being evaluated on backbone. And how he navigates this moment could shape not only this season, but how players view his authority moving forward.
So Angel Reese, the most toxic player in all of basketball, is out here slapping clipboards out of her coaching staff's hand because she's so mad her team committed a foul in the crunch after she shot 15 free throws this game. This is the lowest of the low disrespect that you can show to your coaching staff. She trying to get y'all locked in, worried about the next play, and you so toxic with your terrible, awful attitude that you slap the clipboard out of her hand.
When that clipboard hit the floor, the moment demanded a response. Did Tyler Marsh immediately call timeout? Did he pull Angel Reese aside? Did he sit her down to send a message? According to reports, no. The game continued. Reese finished with 22 points and 15 rebounds, numbers that would normally headline a post-game recap. Instead, they became a footnote to a controversy that swallowed the stat line whole. That's where the silence becomes the story. Marsh has consistently spoken about building a championship culture for the Chicago Sky, one rooted in accountability, growth, and professionalism. He's emphasized creating an environment where players can maximize their potential. But culture isn't what you say in press conferences. It's what you enforce in pressure moments. Championship teams aren't defined only by talent. They're defined by standards. And standards are tested most when they're inconvenient. If a star player produces statistically but avoids visible accountability after a public outburst, the message to the locker room becomes complicated. Is performance enough? Or does behavior matter equally? That tension between production and professionalism is where real leadership lives. And how Marsh addresses that tension, whether publicly or privately, will determine whether this becomes a turning point or the beginning of a precedent.
Guys, Angel Reese had a great game. She had 22 points, 15 rebounds. There were some questionable calls from the referees on both ends of the floor during this game against the Washington Mystics, and they ended up losing by 2 points at the end of the game. And so she's a competitor. Love or hate Angel Reese, she's a competitor. She's a fierce competitor. And I feel like this was just a moment where her frustrations got the best of her. Hopefully, later on, I'm sure she'll probably see this on social media and she'll go up to her coach and be like, my bad, coach. That was not cool of me. I shouldn't have slapped the clipboard.
Here's where the conversation shifts from statistics to standards. Angel Reese has consistently embraced the role model label. She speaks about representation, about confidence, about encouraging young girls to be bold and unapologetic in their ambition. That message resonates with many fans, and it matters. But leadership messaging and leadership behavior have to align. When frustration spills over onto the coaching staff, the optics change. Fair or not, critics begin asking harder questions. What example does that set? How does that reflect on team culture? The difficult layer in all of this is perception of accountability. If a reserve player had a similar outburst, would the response have been different? That's the narrative some observers are pushing, that star status can blur the lines of discipline. Meanwhile, the standings add pressure. The Chicago Sky sitting near the bottom of the conference only intensifies scrutiny. Losing games is one thing. Losing clarity of identity is another. It's also important to separate assumption from evidence. Social media presence doesn't automatically equal selfish priorities. Competitive fire doesn't automatically equal selfishness. But when public moments stack up, perception can start shaping the story more than intent. The real issue isn't personality. It's alignment. Championship teams don't eliminate emotion, they channel it. They don't silence star players, they hold everyone, stars included, to visible standards. Right now, the Sky aren't just fighting opponents, they're fighting narrative. And narratives solidify quickly in professional sports. Whether this becomes a temporary storm or a defining chapter depends less on headlines, and more on how leadership, both from the bench and from the locker room, responds moving forward.